In this lesson, we'll talk a little bit about poly painting, and we'll paint our character and start to paint our base as well. So we covered some of the basics of poly painting. Now, a lot of the stuff that we talked about in the sculpting part as well is going to apply to our poly painting as far as the strokes, the lazy mouse and backtrack and curve modes that we talked about. That's going to apply to poly painting as well. Let's kind of go through a sort of a workflow here for this guy and just kind of show you how we can start to build up some texture for him. So we've got him at his highest level. Let's go ahead and solo him out so that we can just see the creature. Now the colors that I choose and the type of texture that I choose to paint, really it doesn't matter. It's really up to you what you want to do. If you want to do something different, that's perfectly all right. I'm just going to kind of show you how I would go about doing this. So the first thing I would do is, if I haven't already, I would choose kind of a base color, and maybe I want this guy to be sort of a salmon color or a pink color overall. And so I'd also want to choose maybe a material. So if I have maybe the skin shade that I want to add to him along with this pink color, turn on MRGB, go to color, and fill that. So I want to make sure that I fill it with a color so that we have a base to work from and it's not getting the color from the material. So now what I can do is start to define some of these areas. So I know the inside of the mouth, I'll just use a standard brush, and I want that to be darker. So I'll get kind of a darker color. And then we can come in here with RGB selected. I'll turn off Z add. I've still got symmetry on. So now I'm just going to come in and start to block in some of the overall areas of color. So I know that inside the mouth I want to be dark. And so I can start to build that up. Coming in here, building that up. If we want a little bit of red in that, we can come in and add a little bit more color and start to bleed that in. So you can get some really nice layered kind of effect just by working all this color that you're creating here together and kind of going back and forth with a layered kind of approach. Now maybe we'll go back to a darker, take out some of the saturation. Come in here and really push some of those areas in with some black to get that, kind of emphasize the deepness of that. We can do the same thing with the interior of the eyes if we want to kind of fill those in a little bit. I can turn off the lazy mouse if I don't want that on. Kind of fill that up with black. We can also start to define this area down here. I wanted to set it off a little bit, so I'm going to make that a little bit kind of lighter. So maybe something like that. I'm working with symmetry. If it's a little bit too saturated or too dark, you can just change that up very, very quickly. Okay, so we can come in and start to paint and add color that way. It's a really nice and fun way to paint. Assuming you've got enough resolution here, you don't have to worry about your projection. If you've got a projection, if it's working right, if you've got streaking on the sides where the model's gone around the edge, you're just painting basically vertex colors here. We can come in and kind of fill that in. Now, I never like to have just a plain color here. I like to add some variation, and the color spray stroke is a great way to do that. So I'll grab color spray. I'm also going to choose an alpha that's kind of broken up, maybe this alpha 08, and let's drag from our color swatch over here to grab that color. So now when we paint, it's going to actually create some variation, and you can go into your strokes and decide what kind of variation you want to create. You can create variation on the placement, the scale, the color, and the flow. Okay, and so if you want to get colors that are further away, you can increase that value. So I'm going to select a kind of maybe a little bit more of a red, and I'm just going to come over and start to drop in this color, and just adding that little bit of variation will really help making this look a little bit more realistic. And if you want to change up the alpha that you're using, you can do that as well. Create different looks, but you can see how it's this kind of a splotchy look, and there is a little bit of color variation in there. So we can come in here, and the key now is just kind of spend some time layering these colors on top of each other. So I could come in here, start to add this. I could kind of get a little bit of a different color, maybe more of an orange. Start to layer that on top as well. Just creating a little bit of that variation instead of having just one solid color. Coming in here and adding that in. Same thing up here. Okay, on the lips, let's go ahead and add, we'll get kind of more of a pink. You could do like a green if you wanted to. I want to do kind of a pink color. I'm going to take off the color spray so I can just kind of add that to our lips here. Okay, just kind of lighten those up. Keep in mind we will have teeth in there. So I'm just kind of lightening up the lips and that lip area. Okay, let's kind of do the same thing up here. Kind of in the high points, the high spots. Just add a little bit of lightness there. Just creating a little bit of variation and also bringing out some of the detail that we've got. Also, I might want to get a little bit more of a saturated red and come in here and just add a little bit of color to some of these areas in what would be kind of the cheeks, maybe the nose, maybe the front of the brow. Just adding a little bit more color, maybe the chin. Now if that looks a little bit too much, I think it does, all you have to do is go back, select that original color. Let's get back our color spray, and we can start to just real gently go over what we just painted, and that'll really just blend it back in to the surface a little bit more. All right, if you want to get maybe a little bit more into the pink, you can come in and create that. Or if you want to create something a little bit more desaturated, just depends on the color that you choose. Come in here and create that texture. Maybe create a little bit of darkness in some of these areas, maybe in some of the wrinkles. Kind of darken that up a little bit. Okay, pretty simple. And again, you don't have to concentrate on doing something that looks the same, but you just want to use kind of the same overall techniques. So just kind of building this up. Okay. Now if you wanted to, you could create raised detail at the same time by sculpting the same time you're doing that. You could also use the drag rectangle with an alpha to add detail, just like that. And you'd be adding color, and you'd also be adding sculpted detail as well at the same time. Also, we talked about using the noise. You can have the noise drive the color as well. So if you look in your noise, edit that, you have the ability to change the color as well. It's actually at the top of the edit window there. All right. So let's say I want to kind of vary this up. So now I'll select this one and have a color spray, turn off Z add, and now I can just start to break that up. Okay. If I don't want so much variation, I can just use kind of a spray without the variation. Come in and just kind of break things up a little bit. Okay, we can also start to work on the teeth if we want to do that. So grabbing the teeth, you can start to get kind of an off-white, and with our material, we'll go ahead and fill that. And then we can come back in with our white and start to paint these. Now if we don't want the paint to bleed over into the other tooth, we could come in and use that auto masking that we used before, because these are all still polygroups. So now we start to come in and add that color. It's going to do it on a one-to-one basis as far as the polygroups that we were painting on. Okay, so I can come in now and kind of try to bring these a little bit back towards the white. kind of do these on an individual basis. I'll just do a few of them. And then we can come in with a darker color, okay, and start to just paint in a little bit of grime in here, coming around the top of the teeth. Okay, maybe you got somewhere on the bottom as well. Just vary it a little bit. And you can use the other alphas as well. Okay, another thing that you can do is we can kind of darken up the crevices of our model. So if we go down to masking, we can clear out our mask. Let me grab this main guy here. And let's say that we want to come in and just darken up the creases of this. So what we can do is mask by cavity. So I'll open that up, hit mask by cavity, and that'll go through, and you can see it's actually created a mask for those interior areas. Now what I want to do is go ahead and invert the mask, and then we can select that color and just get a little bit of a darker version of it. And if we want to, we can paint it, or we can just fill it. And let's just fill it with color. And you can see that that's actually filled that in. Now it's a little bit too harsh, so I think we want to change. So we'll clear the mask and undo that painting. Okay, and so we can blur it. We can also change the cavity profile and remask, and that'll create different effects. So you might not want all those little bits in there. If you don't want all that, you can kind of pull this curve up a little bit. We can maybe change the intensity a little bit in the blur. And I want to try to get the creases inside here, not necessarily all the little bits out there. So, and we'll invert that. And let's go ahead and fill it. And if you want to use kind of a lower RGB intensity, we'll turn off the view mask. That'll allow us to do it a little bit at a time. So we can fill, 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 and you can see how that's starting to kind of bring those wrinkles out. Okay, if you want to create a little bit more variation in here, or maybe you wanted to do some markings on this guy, feel free to do that as well. So, coming in here and maybe grabbing a couple of these alphas and pulling out some markings back here. So just have a little fun with it. Now in the next lesson, what we're going to do is start to paint this base, and we're going to actually use Spotlight to do that. Spotlight will allow us to use photographs to paint from. So at this point we've just kind of been painting overall on our own, but using Spotlight we can use pictures and images that we've obtained from somewhere else or created ourselves to project through and paint. So we'll look at that in the next lesson.